Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Better Than Food Book Reviews. How's it going? Good to see you. Man, have I got a book for you. Time for some Mishima! Today is The Sailor Who Fell from Grace with the Sea by the Japanese author Yukio Mishima, published in 1963 and translated by John Nathan. I first read this one like 10 years ago or more, so it was nice to revisit. Mishima needs no introduction on this channel, but I'll give a short one. He was one of the most famous Japanese authors of the 20th century, and at one point the most famous. In 1970, at the age of 45, he staged a military coup with his own militia that failed, and he subsequently committed seppuku in the samurai manner, as in cutting your own stomach open and getting your head chopped off. That thing. It was the most dramatic death in literary history, that I know of at least. It's a hell of a story. He was a deeply complex character, contradictory, enigmatic, and a truly brilliant writer. So I'll give you a synopsis of the book. The story concerns a family in Yokohama. It's about a 13-year-old boy named Noboru, his widowed mother Fusaka, and her new lover, a sailor named Ryuji. Noboru's father died a few years before the story takes place. Noboru has joined a small gang of precocious 13-year-old boys, self-proclaimed geniuses, who are militantly opposed to the world of adults, led by a boy only known as the Chief. It's like, the judge, right? The judge could very well have been a mentor for the Chief. While appearing good on the surface, they've formed a philosophy that is antithetical to the humanism of the adults, a radical schism between the old generation and the new. They're a small cult dedicated to a ruthless idealism via moral desensitization, a death-centric philosophy that produces a venomous, solipsistic hubris within them, a dangerous confidence, a dangerous pride. Think like Children of the Corn or Children of the Damned, that kind of thing. For them, it seems that death is the only thing that gives life meaning, and the meaning of one's life lies in how they die. It's a vague philosophical stance, kind of like a fascist nihilism with agreed-upon symbols that transcend the meaninglessness of everything. Symbols like the sea, the ocean, for example. There are certain pure things, right? Meanwhile, Fusaka, the mother, and Ryuji, the sailor, are madly in love. So the novel describes these two parallel worlds, that of the adults and that of these boys, leading up to the moment when they finally collide. It's difficult to discuss the work of Mishima without discussing his real life, because the themes in both his writing and his real life heavily overlap. We can see many of the thoughts and ideas that consumed Mishima in this novel. There are clear hints at what was to come, right? Mishima was an elegant dandy who had an obsession with death, specifically the idea of a glorious death, a noble death, an honorable death, a meaningful death, right? An idealistic death. Though he was married and had kids, he was a closeted gay man, possessing both hypermasculine and hyperfeminine qualities, both in his work and his life. He was both a poet and bodybuilder, for example. He's actually the reason I got in the gym years ago. And coincidentally, not too long ago at our gym here, I got recognized by a guy, I think his name was Cody, and I apologize if that was incorrect, and he sees this. Very nice guy. He said he found me through a review of Mishima, and I was like, he's what got me in here. So that was cool. Comes full circle, right? Good stuff. All of the characters in the book are a composite of the dramatic, idiosyncratic elements of Mishima's psyche, facets of his personality, right? They're different pieces of him, different pieces of his mind. Ryuji's attraction to glory and his seafaring, manly, adventurous lifestyle, very Hemingway, right? Fusaka's desire for Ryuji, also her business and luxury goods, that's definitely Mishima. And Noboru's pull towards death and murder. Of course. The novel is almost like an exploded piece of autofiction where you can clearly see each of these delineated pieces of his personality that form the whole. Because of this, Mishima knows their emotions inside and out, so that's why the novel's so strong. With each character and their desires, he's able to create a strong, empathetic link. We can understand each character because of how deep he goes into each of their minds. Here's a part about Ryuji the sailor's desire for glory. Ryuji hated the immobility of the land, the eternally unchanging surfaces, but a ship was another kind of prison. At 20, he had been passionately certain, there's just one thing I'm destined for, and that's glory. That's right, glory. He had no idea what kind of glory he wanted, or what kind he was suited for. He knew only that in the depths of the world's darkness was a point of light which had been provided for him alone, and would draw near someday to irradiate him and no other. The writing is poetic, but it maintains its integrity without becoming saccharine. Mishima is writing the line, but he usually pulls it off. Usually. The result is a kind of subtle, romantic, gothic epic. A novel soaked in the elements, the sun, the sea, and foliage. Luxuriant, evocative passages juxtaposed with a dark philosophy. It's both dark and radiant, right? Many nautical descriptions, tropical plants. The romantic portions are very lush. There's a tropical gothic element to the story which is very effective, very atmospheric. At least in the first half of the book. Mishima connects exterior material descriptions of the world to the interior states of his characters. The sea is a symbol of glory for Ryuji, the loading of cargo on a ship in the sweltering heat as a metaphor for Fusaka's increasing desire for Ryuji, and in the most disturbing scene in the book, Noburu's meditation on an eviscerated carcass, a symbol of his dispassionate resolve. It's this act of depraved transgression that initiates him into the realm of death and sets his whole trajectory in motion. You could also connect that incident with his voyeurism as Noboru does himself in the book, seeing that which is off limits and shielded by society. Sex and death. True reality. As Mishima informs us, the truly powerful element for Noboru is death. The book is divided into two parts named after seasons, summer and winter, which I interpret as symbolizing life and death. In a terrific interview with the translator John Nathan linked below, Nathan explains a prominent theme in Mishima's work connecting death, murder, and beauty. Or at least death and beauty, sometimes murder. Informing us that Mishima believed beauty could be preserved via death or murder. You can spot this in the story just as you can see it in his real life. Nathan also wrote a terrific biography of Mishima entitled Mishima, A Biography, which I'll link below if you're interested. And again, the author's name is John Nathan, same guy who translated this book. It's no surprise that Mishima was a fan of Georges Bataille. Both were highly engaged with the idea of death. Both had that balance of beauty and horror, that contrast, right? Walking that line. Dark as Mishima was, he also had a tremendous sense of pitch black humor. In the story, when the chief puts on his black latex gloves as Ryuji tells his story, that was just pure dark comedy. It's like, yep, back to work, boys. Oh god, you'll see. Mishima was a funny dude. Mishima's life could be seen as one enormous response to failed idealism. An inability to accept anything less than the ultimate fate he envisioned. It's the same with this book. The narrative exemplifies this idea with Noburu's idealistic vengeance for the failed ideal represented by Ryuji. What Noboru struggles with is the domestication of his hero, Ryuji the sailor. His domestication or castration, right? When Ryuji enters into a relationship with Noboru's mother, he decides to stop sailing and become an employee at her high-end clothing store. Noboru and his gang view it as a kind of betrayal, the pursuit of glory traded in for the soft life. Mishima portrays it as a giving up on previous desires, abandoning an ideal, right? In that interview with John Nathan that I mentioned, Nathan brought up the moment in 1946 when the Japanese Emperor Hirohito declared that he wasn't divine but only human. I'm almost certain this inspired Mishima for the trajectory of Ryuji, a god reduced to a man, right? But Mishima also shows us that Ryuji is burnt out, tired. Life is a series of trade-offs. That's often what being an adult is and what the boys don't understand. There are two worlds here, the world of idealism and the world of reality. The world of the adults and the world of the boys. Mishima shows us both points of view. Ryuji seems to have one foot in both. It's ambiguous which perspective Mishima has allegiance to. I'm assuming because of the things that happen in real life, it's the boys. But, you know, it seems more complicated than that. The story is also a tragedy about the failure of communication. Ryuji fails to express what he's truly feeling about the sea to Fusaka, and actually has some overlap with Noboru and his own ideals, it seems. These characters have an intense depth to them that is unexpressed to the other characters, that is virtually impossible to express. And the same could certainly be said for Mishima. His whole life was an attempt at true communication. It's a book about stifled ideals. When it comes to Ryuji versus the boys, Mishima said in an interview linked below that, quote, "It's a sort of conflict between two types of romanticism." In that same interview, Mishima says that Ryuji represents the old-fashioned type, the samurai type, of romanticism, and that the boys represent the new existential type of romanticism, and so the worlds collide. Warring romantic ideals. It's very Mishima, right? The group of boys are arrogant, appallingly cruel, and believe they have true knowledge of the world and reality. They're the most fantastical element of the novel, because they're so precocious it's as if they have the intellect of adults, driven by a rigid fascist purity, like a sneaky, secret Hitler Youth. Mishima has projected his own metaphysical struggles and ideals into them. Like the boys in the story, he perceived a hollowness in the modern world. These boys are trying to figure out what is truly worth living and dying for. This is the same struggle of Mishima. It's the same struggle of many of us, honestly. In another interview linked below, Mishima said, "If one cannot find a value that transcends oneself, life itself, in a spiritual sense, is rendered meaningless." And we can gather from that interview, his work, and his real life, that for Mishima, the pinnacle of existence was dying for something. The boys, like Mishima, are searching for something profound and real, something that does not slip into humiliating mediocrity. That's what Noboru thought when he first saw Ryuji, the sailor, a manifestation of an ideal, a hero, a symbol of the sea, which for the boys is something pure. But the sailor changes, and Noboru is humiliated. That's the meaning of the title, The Sailor Who Fell from Grace with the Sea. It's a good title. The book is clearly about the personas we craft in society, the roles all people play, the deception, the false impression that adults give to children and vice versa. The truth is always far more complicated and sometimes much darker. You can understand the perspective of the boys. They realize society is a ridiculous theatrical performance. Their ignorance is enormous, their cruelty is appalling, but their basic premise is correct. In a way, the book shows us that the search for the true ideal is always confronted with the brick wall of reality. This is no less true in Mishima's real life than it was in his fiction. In his theatrical suicide, things did not go quite as planned. I'll spare you the details but you can look it up. Without arriving at the same conclusions, many of us can relate to Mishima's struggle for meaning. What is worth living and dying for? Worth considering. What are we living and dying for, if anything? It's an interesting and extremely subjective question. Is achieving an ideal possible? Or is it just empty symbolism? That's a question the book makes us ask. Mishima was an unusual mix of Western individualism and Eastern collectivism. There was always a serious tension inside him, caught between these two cultural modes. The need to be an individual and simultaneously to transcend individuality. Rebellion versus conformity. Caught between two modes of existence, both with enormous pros and cons. This is existence in human society. The need to be alone, and the need to be with others. Maybe Mishima was deeply confused and conflicted, but he wasn't uncertain. I'd wager that what makes people of both Western and Eastern cultures deeply uncomfortable about Mishima was his heavy conviction in his violent end. He'd meticulously planned it for years. His certainty. It's the same cold, callous certainty of the boys in the book. He was operating on a personal philosophy the likes of which we've never seen before or since. Nobody has ever been so artistically competent and simultaneously outrageous. Ever. He takes the cake. Love him or hate him, there literally was never an author, a personality, a mind, like Yukio Mishima. And this story is among his best. From the ones I've read so far, this is my favorite novel by Mishima. It moves fast, hits hard, asks some intense questions. For example, what are you living and dying for? It's my kind of beach read, you know? An existential crisis with your margarita. It's a pure distillation of his major ideas, tight as a fist around a sword. Better than food. 5 out of 5 coffees. I fucking love it. I loved it the first time, I still love it. And it's short too. You don't get much more bang for your buck when it comes to literature. So what did I dislike? Nothing. So who should read it? If you enjoy the work of Kobo Abe, Junichiro Tanizaki, and Georges Bataille, check this out, right away. You know, in a recent podcast with Jason Bajada, I said that the author, dead or alive, that I'd most like to have dinner with was Georges Bataille. I take that back. It's actually Yukio Mishima. Because, just imagine that guy. A total ham, a total manly man, a total queen, a total psychotically dark philosophical wonder, and a totally disciplined, genius author. All wrapped in one. In other words, the perfect dinner guest. I might hide the knives though. And with that, coffee time. For those of you who are new, thank you very much for stopping by and watching the show. I take the names of all the patrons on Patreon who are financially supporting the show and I place their names in this mason jar. And for every review, I pull out a name. And whoever's name I pull out, I send a hard copy of the book I'm reviewing, plus a bag of coffee, roasted by yours truly. And the coffee is delicious. Currently from Brazil. If you would like to get in on that and help support the show, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. You can click on the link below or go to patreon.com/books are better than food, and the tiers start at $5 per video. I make about 3 to 4 videos a month on average. Please don't forget to set a monthly limit if you're on a budget. Though if you do set a limit, please allow for at least 3 monthly charges in order to get the video call perk. That's for the $10 per video plus tiers. In addition, for becoming a paid patron, you'll get access to all this cool stuff. And international shipping is included, however unfortunately I can't send coffee to the UAE or Qatar. Thank you so much to all my patrons for helping me keep this project going. It truly means a lot, and best of luck. Okay, here we go. Stephen. Thank you very much, Stephen. Really appreciate it. You're going to receive The Sailor Who Fell from Grace with the Sea by Yukio Mishima, plus a bag of coffee, roasted by yours truly, and I hope you love both. Cheers. Please subscribe if you have not already, and hit the thumbs up if you enjoyed this, and always remember, die reading. Thanks for watching. Have a good one. Ciao!